Hey,
So good
SJ.
to meet you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well coming off of a lot of travel. This whole month has been funeral, wedding, communion, baby shower, gender reveal. So there's been a lot going on, but all great things. So I'm well. I'm excited. I've been outside.
Nita, it's so good to see you. You're beautiful, elegant, sophisticated, it's the whole thing, So Nita, yeah, it's a pleasure for you to join our Just Flow podcast.
Thank you
And
for
yeah, and Allison, we miss you. We're gonna do like we miss you, Allison, here. But we always like to start with, as you know, our mission is about self-love and self-evolution. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm already getting emotional, but I feel like you are a perfect leader and mentor in regards to self-evolution, self-growth, self-empowerment. So maybe before I get started with all the questions, how about I ask for you that we like to ask all our guests to start, who is Nita?
Who is Nita? Oh boy. Um, Nita is a multi-dimensional. I feel like everyone kind of gives that answer. I don't know if everyone gives that answer. Definitely a multifaceted, multi-dimensional ambivert. So I'm definitely as much introverted as I am extroverted. Um, Very observant, loving, um, ambitious. I've been told that I have a nurturing vibe. I consider myself to be a being, a soul in human clothes, is what I love to say. I'm just navigating and having a human experience and want to make it as much as fun as much as possible.
That is so powerful because, Nita, we always speak about how like it's like we fill our soul and our body is just like a vessel. Like it's not even a vessel. I feel like it's just like it's like a costume sometimes.
An avatar.
Yes. Well, I keep muting myself because I apologize. There's a lot of background noise, but I guess yeah,
Again,
I guess to start, maybe I could ask you what is our connection? And then I'll share my connection with you.
okay. I met Sinju, who I very much so admire. Um, Sinju left an impression on me the very first day I met her, and I probably have never told her that. But I met Sinju at a media agency where we used to work back in 2018. Um, I had been working in the advertising industry at that point. I want to say some 7, 8 years. And prior to that, I was at a record label. And then coming into the role, I was at the agency for a good 5 or 6 months. And then I got asked to work with a sister agency, which is one of our creative agencies. Our head of analytics, we had quite a few head of analytics, but our head of analytics for US had asked me to basically, step in and salvage quite a few accounts because there were some things that were promised to quite a few clients. I believe it was like a total of 4 to 5 clients, but it was one in particular. And it was it was an agency that was based out of Brooklyn. And I was told that I would be given 2 analysts to help, get back in the good graces of these clients. So one fine day, I come into work, tons of meetings as usual, because I work in analytics. I'm a data and analytics engineer, architect, maestro, all of the wonderful adjectives, data scientist. And upon going through a day full of meetings, I want to say it was somewhere around like the afternoon, I had a one-on-one or a meet and greet with SJ. And I said, okay, I'm going to meet my analyst. I'm excited. I had a few other analysts that I was working with on other accounts at that particular agency, but for this client, she walked in and there was an instant connection. And I must say, Sinju has a very beautiful soul. And the first thing she said was, she was ready to work. SA was ready to work. She came in ready to work. So, often when you're a director or or in a managerial role, you're not really sure what type of an analyst or support staff that you're going to get. Sinju came in kicking, guns blazing, rah, 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 and she said one line and I knew like instantly that we were going to have a great connection. We were going to have a great relationship. And she was like, I'm really excited. I'm so happy to meet you. She came in with such beautiful and amazing energy. And she was just so positive. That's probably because she hasn't been working in advertising for too long. So she wasn't jaded, but she came in with all this beautiful energy. She was like, I want to get working and, I want to do real work, not like other people who pretend like they're working, not busy work. I want to do real work. And I was like, who is this amazing young lady who's like, give me work to do? I'm like, oh, we have tons of work for you. Don't worry. But it was very heartwarming and refreshing. And we at the time, there were a lot of planets in transit. There was a lot going on cosmically. So there were some references to like the moon phases and Mercury retrograde. And from there, I knew like instantly that, me and Sinju were going to have a great relationship. So my first impression of Sinju, meeting her at this agency, I'm taking on this new support staff, not sure what type of a personality she has. And she just came in and she's been amazing. She's been an amazing friend, sister for the last like 4 years, 5 years now. Yeah.
So I'm gonna add a little more. One, Nita is so humble. Before I start crying, she is so humble, so wise, so kind, always ready to share knowledge. Knowledge is a gift in itself, and every day you show me, Nita, that what a true leader is, who is someone who are alongside all the teams, are alongside the difficulty and the adversity. And I feel like it's like when I see you, it's like glam, 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 like flowers, like sparkles, more sparkles, And I'm also so grateful to have met you in my life path.
Funny thing is, the wedding that I went to this past weekend, I got a lot of glitter from my dress on my brother. And he was like, you see this? There's glitter everywhere. I was like, you have to sparkle. So yes, sparkles.
So that's the energy for us this year or forever. So now that we share kind of like how we met, we always like to ask our guest, what does self-love and self-evolution mean for you?
Self-love, I would say, I'm going to use this word. It's giving yourself grace. Giving yourself grace, because I know I'm a Capricorn and we're like extremely hard workers, but separate from the signs, when we look at people who are like high achievers, overachievers, and people who are like, doers and go-getters, we tend to be very hard on ourselves. We tend to be very hard on our bodies. Being selfless, being a mother, it's very easy to forget to give yourself grace. I'm a perfectionist. I'm working on it. I'm a work in progress. Knowing that everything doesn't have to be perfect, and working through that and constantly doing like the check-in with myself and how can I do that better? How can I be a better person? How can I show up better? And going through those phases tends to put us in a mindset where we forget to pour the love back into ourselves, where we're in this constant, like, being from New York is like, everything's like quick, but being more paced and more even and balanced is how I strive to give myself self-love, is making sure that I'm balanced and that I'm not leaning too much on one side where it's like constantly busy, where I'm like neglecting myself. So there are things that I do to infuse that back into myself, and it's getting back, it's remembering not to lose yourself, or even if you've lost yourself, finding a way to get back to yourself and being cognizant and aware of that so that you can incorporate those things that make you feel more centered and make you feel in tune and make you feel like you're pouring the love back into yourself and giving that good energy and circulating it, because it can't just go out. It has to come back. Separate from makeup, just, routines, bubble baths. I love a bubble bath. So finding those things that we enjoy that makes us feel great about ourselves and being religious about doing those things. So massages and bubble baths, and being religious about doing those in a more ritualistic way. So it's like incorporated into the daily life, into my daily life, is what I try to be better at.
No, I was gonna say, Nita, thank you so much for sharing, which is like, I feel like your unique experience in New York, in a way, I feel like when I lived for a while in New York, it really taught me my own unique identity.
Mhm.
But then also sometimes there's so much noise,
Mm.
and then you forget your own autonomy. It's like so trippy because it's like New York teaches you your autonomy, but then at the same time, it sometimes you have the tendency to slip away from your autonomy.
Mhm.
So how have you kind of managed like pouring into yourself, recognizing your own pace? Because I feel like at times, even myself, I forget that I'm my own unique journey. No matter
Mhm.
how many people I know, no matter how many movies I watch or how many books I read, it's not going to be 100% my story.
Right.
But then sometimes I forget about that. So, what are some things you have in terms of advice in regards to that?
Uh, okay, so New York is interesting because New York, it's a gift and a curse. New York has this energy of groupthink. It has especially when you're working corporate, there's this emphasis on working collaboratively, being in a team. So that's kind of like indoctrinated into people who are like, we have to work on this together. And then let's huddle, like that's the common thing that you hear all the time. And it's very easy to slip in to a groupthink mindset, especially when you have your own individuality and all your own ideas, and being a person of color, and coming into certain work settings, the whole diversity and inclusion thing, it sounds nice. It sounds nice, but in practice, there are not many places where you'll find where you're working corporate where you're really being heard. So, and it's not intentional. There are some places where, yes, it absolutely is intentional. You don't have we say that we want you to share, but we really don't want you to share. And then, there are places that do encourage, there are offices and workplaces that do encourage that. But what tends to happen is when there's so many voices, or depending on what you're working on, whether you're working on a pitch, companies, agencies, individuals, titles, role, like it's very easy to get lost in the sauce of, okay, I expressed myself and I completely got shot down. Maybe next time there's only but so much of that you can take. And it automatically forms this social norm where there's just one voice, right? But being in the analytics role, it's taking all of those voices and synthesizing it into something that's cohesive and easy enough for a client to understand, right? And working in different work settings, it's almost too easy to slip into the, let me just forget it myself. I need to just get this thing done. It's not about me, right? So you're always reminded that it's not about you. So, and it's very difficult to take that hat off when you go home, because you're working around the clock. You're working till 9, 10, 11 o'clock, or even if you get off at 7, your, 2 hour and a half to commute back home, then you're, taking care of the family, and then you're back online again, finishing something up. And it's like, so you go home, let's work as a team. You're at work, let's work as a team. It's very easy to just completely slip into like, you know what? I'm not going to work as a team. I'm not doing any of that. When I get home, I'm logging off. I'm watching a movie. I'm doing nothing. It took me a very long time. I've been working since I was 14. I've been working corporate since 2000. It has taken me probably like 19 years to even get into I would say COVID and the world lockdown forced me into a mindset of stop, stop working, do nothing, and be okay with doing nothing. And on top of doing nothing, take this time to do something that you enjoy for you.
That is so crazy, Nita, because it's like, I can relate to what you're sharing with me, especially growing up from an immigrant family.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much just keep busy. That's all. Keep busy, pay your rent on time, But then after a while, we start wondering, what about purposeful living for me?
Right. Why am I doing this?
And like, it's so crazy that you're sharing with me about like this group think mentality, because a lot of the times our sense of self is dependent on what people say. And so I think it's even harder for certain groups of people to be like, just literally wake up and be like, what about me?
Oh no, that's a sin.
Like, what about me?
God forbid. Because when you look at like, unfortunately, being here in the States and being an immigrant or from an immigrant family or being foreign, there's almost an expectation for you not to say, like, people expect you to be self-sacrificing
And submit.
Oh, absolutely.
And how dare you speak for yourself?
That's something, through cognitive dissonance. Unfortunately, the stereotype is that Asians, because they have like, there's respect and honor and respecting authority, that if I'm of a certain group, I'm going to throw and wield my authority at an Asian person because I know they're going to be submissive, because they've grown up in a culture where they don't talk back to elders and they respect authority, and
This is like,
they use that to their advantage,
this
unfortunately.
is like the show Beef that you told me to watch.
It's crazy. I told you about Beef. Like, great show, by the way.
So Nita, I feel like you shared with me so many gems already, and I feel like one kind of nugget that I took from what you shared with me just now is like, you lived and saw all aspects of work life. When you showed me that you worked since you were 14, you were leading teams in a corporate world for a while. And so I feel like, especially in 2023, like you mentioned, with COVID and just the latest like world news, I think we're all trying our best in this unpredictable times. And people are in different situations. And if you could share one advice to anyone, whether they're, working hard to get on a TV show, or working hard in a corporate world, or working hard, at a sandwich shop, or just doing what they can in the circumstances that they are in, because I feel like you've been there. What would you share with them about just any words of encouragement?
I would say be intentional about, even if it means that you have to stop and meditate. And I don't even say meditate, but stop and sit with yourself. sit with yourself and ask yourself, what brings you joy? Right? Especially now, because now we're at a point where technology is allowing for a lot of the heavy lifting to be taken care of. We're moving closer to singularity. We're a lot closer than most people realize because there's a lot of distractions. But this would be the most ideal time in this initial stage before we are completely immersed into singularity for someone to ask themselves, what brings me joy and what does living look like for me? Right? Like genuinely, like what genuinely brings you joy? Not the thing that you need to do to pay the bills, not the thing that you need to do to make your parents proud per se, or to make someone else happy. What makes you fulfilled if you were to sit and say, this is how I want to live. I want to only work 9 months out of the year. Go and get tattoos from different parts of the world when I vacation. What brings you joy and how do you want to live? And how do you see that? How do you see your life in the next 5, not to be cliche, but what does the next year, 2 years, 5 years look like? Set the target and ask yourself, is this going to get me closer to that? What am I doing today? Whether it's the roles, the jobs that I'm taking, the people I'm interacting with, the people I'm closely tied to, that I'm engaging with on a day-to-day, is this getting me closer? Am I learning and pulling things from this experience that will feed into this thing that I plan to do and how I intend to live tomorrow? I think the intentional living is what will be most crucial, because living in 2025 is going to look drastically different from 2023 and is going to accelerate and is going to be, I mean, living next year is going to look completely different. Living in July is going to look completely different because that's what the time is calling for. Because there are going to be things that are going to get introduced that would have at one point seemed impossible, that will be revealed. Oh no, it's possible, it's been happening, but now we're actually announcing it. So having a clear mind and having a clear direction of where your destination is will help you navigate the craziness. Because if you think that there's distractions now, oh, there's absolutely going to be distractions another year from now and 2 years from now, or things that could potentially distract someone from their particular journey or path if they don't have a particular coordinate as to where they want to be.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this wisdom. And if I could share, like, my personal recent experience was like, for some reason, as I've been practicing everyday self-empowerment, self-love, a few weeks ago, I woke up and I got my journal and I shared with my friends this. I opened my journal and I wrote, what do I like and what do I dislike? And Nita, when I tell you, it was a mind trip, because I started writing what I like, and then my brain was like, is that what you want people to hear what you like, or is that what you really like? It's like, especially for, like you mentioned, at times, certain communities, we've been programmed for so long to always think about what other people would think, or think about what is the ideal for our groupthink members, you know, that it's so programmed in us. And it was just a mind trip, because as I started writing, I'm like, am I actually saying this, or is this what I think people would like to hear?
Interesting.
And so, and because you come from a product leadership mindset and everything's interconnected, it's so powerful when you share with us, what's your target? What's your roadmap? It's like when we work in the tech industry, there's all hands meetings about this is our product roadmap. This is, at this stage, we're launching this feature, and this feature relates to the overall ecosystem. And these are our targets. And this is how we're going to strategize to speak with our clients. But then that should also transcend to R, because we're essentially, even if we're not a product, we're an entity in ourselves. And I feel like at times we're not taught that.
No.
Like,
No.
I really feel like the product technology building mindset should replicate towards our entity and our essence. Like, what is our 6-month target? What feature do we want to acquire? Is it, practicing the piano? Is it learning guitar? Like, what is it,
Well, that's very unpopular. The moment, and I guarantee you, the moment you sitting with yourself and writing on a piece of paper, what do I like? What do I not like? Right? In all of your brilliance, in all of your effervescence, and the thing that you show up to do in the world that you're amazing at, if you're not fulfilled and you're not happy, right? What do? You continue to go on the wheel because somebody else is benefiting? And the moment that you sit with yourself and you actually ask yourself that question, and you're saying, okay, am I living in a way that fulfills me? Like, am I happy with what I'm doing? Okay, so if I decided tomorrow that I didn't want to do this anymore, and you tell the people that it impacts, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I thought I needed to do this because this is what I learned. But in actuality, I never really took a chance to sit back and say, do I really like this? Do I really like doing this? Is this fun? Right? Am I learning something from this? Am I taking something? Is there something I can take away from this and apply to other aspects of my life? And the moment that you say that you don't want to do something anymore, wow, the reactions from other people. I was in a role and it was like really jacking up my mental health. And I'm like, and this is after I've sat with myself and I've set targets and I've set roadmaps. And I'm like, the moment I sat and I said, how does this fit into my roadmap? No, I'm unhappy. I'm drained. I said, I did not want to fall into this. And it's catching yourself and making sure that you are being self-aware of the things that you're doing on a day-to-day for other people, working in certain roles and whatever it is that you're doing, constantly having a checkpoint. Like, you need internal checkpoints to ask yourself, how is this feeding? How does this measure against this set target, against my own internal roadmap? That constant, we should be doing that every 3 months, every month, every quarter, we should be doing an internal check-in.
That's so true.
So we can level set ourselves, right? And we're not falling into the thing because everybody else is happy. Like, yeah, there's all these accolades. Oh, you're so successful. I'm like, I'm successful. We're over here like powering all the things that you're passionate about. But when do you power the things that you internally are passionate about? Right. So when you did the what I like and what I dislike, what was the takeaway? What did you?
I think the takeaway was that it wasn't even the things I wrote on that list, what I like and what I don't like. Mm-hmm. It was the realization that I was dishonest to myself for a long time.
Okay.
In a way where I think we speak about this, where it's like our commonality with you and me is that we've been selfless for so long. Mm-hmm. And we grew up watching selflessness. Mm-hmm. And it really messes with me at times to see that in our society today, when you speak with certain individuals, the society automatically expects selflessness.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And it's like, I want to shout out to all the wonderful women and mothers and grandmothers in the world, because I humble myself, like just seeing how much they give without anything in return.
Yeah. Or expectation of anything in return.
Right. And I think that, you know, I'm still practicing like self-love, and I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect self-love because it's kind of like yoga. Someone told me like you can't perfect a pose, and that's the joy of doing yoga. It's not about perfecting, it's enjoying the ride, you know? And I don't know, like I want to ask you, because in our previous episode, we spoke about how the biggest, you know, the hardest thing for me to realize was like, and even now, is that you would think good things happen to good people in this simulation and bad things happen to bad people in this simulation, but it's not always the case. I'm not saying that everyone is 100% good or 100% bad, because we're all perfect and that we're imperfect. But I think, you know, what wowed me recently is seeing that a lot of people around me, they're working on their passions. A lot of people around me, like, you know, shout out to Pooja. Like, she is like a screenwriter, she is doing comedy, like, it's like, and so I think my question is like, how do you continue to pace yourself, and how do you keep going with your targets while the manifested, or while the simulation may not be giving you like a physical affirmation at times?
I 1,000% believe that excuse me, it's not about good things and good people and bad things and bad people. It's about all things happen to all people, and that it's based on a combination of the things that you do or did have control of before you incarnated into the simulation, in conjunction to all the things that pop up. Because remember, nothing is the same. No yoga pose is the same, right? Excuse me. Your cells are constantly mutating and changing every second. So no two things are going to be the same, because your body's not the same from second to second, right? So there's
like
no
quantum.
Right, we're quantum beings, right? So in a quantum situation, you know, all things are happening to all people. And I don't believe that it's that the simulation isn't giving you the affirmation. The simulation is moving and morphing according to your movement. So if there are all these things that you all these ingredients that you got and you threw together and you're going to bake a cake, and while you're in the process of putting the ingredients together, so there's certain things that you're handed, and then there's anomalies. There's a lot of anomalies. But the reason why there's anomalies is because every time you make a decision, we're at a fork in the road every second, deciding what to say, what not to say, right? In addition to where to go, where not to go. Like, oh, I'm going to have pizza, or I'm going to have Panera bread. You know, those things are causing for the simulation to throw back a response to your actions. The simulation is reacting to your actions and so forth. And you're reacting to said actions, because I was meant to meet you in 2018, right? So there were a multitude of things that happened to you that got you to the point to make you go to good, bad, and different. There were bad things that were happening to you that made you want to feel like, I need to leave this company and go to another company. So you need bad things to happen. You need adverse things. You need good things. You need great things. You need things that you're not, because you're making decisions. So you made a decision and I made a decision, and those two decisions caused for us to bump into each other, if that's what it is, right? At that given time in 2018. So that's just the simulation moving and morphing like an Etch-a-Sketch. Imagine, so I love to refer to the Adjustment Bureau, because the Adjustment Bureau has, you know, your life in a book. Like, they open up the book and it's a whole Etch-a-Sketch with this whole path and this journey. And it's morphing and it's moving according to every decision that you make. Because we might need you to meet Sinju in 2018 at this company. Okay, if you make a decision to do this, okay, now you're dating this person. So imagine all the decisions that you're making, right? And there's tons of things above us. There's the creator, there's the universe, there's black holes, there's stars, there's cosmology, there's ancestors, there's angels, there's demons, there's all of these things, this hierarchy, and like everybody has a say. So on a cosmic level, there's a certain level of groupthink because there's a part of it that's manifest destiny where we need a certain group of people or beings to meet at a certain point, inflection point, because we need this group to do a thing. So like every time you see something is built or something's created, a chat GPT, a car, an airplane, we need to orchestrate beings or certain talents to come together at specific points, specific coordinates. I'm not going to say time, coordinates to collectively do a thing. But there are things that they have to do individually that will prep them and train them so that they're prepared to show up to do said thing.
So crazy, Nita, is like, you know how I shared with you that I'm recently watching a Netflix show, Unlock My Boss? And it's so crazy because a scene in that episode, like, you know, he becomes a CEO and like he asks his mom, like, you know, the anxiety of making decisions. And the mom goes, treat life like crossroads. Every situation is a crossroad. So if there's a whole bunch of crossroads in front of you, just choose the road where you feel that you would have the least regret.
Follow your gut. And that's the reason why then they tell you don't overthink it. That's where don't, as above, so below. So when you're thinking, you're in your left brain. When you're feeling, you're in your right brain. That's why they always tell you to follow your intuition. Your intuition's in your gut. Like it's scientific, it's spiritual, it's all hand in hand. There's different terminology for it, but essentially they're saying the same thing. The moment you stop thinking and you stop, because to fall into deep meditation, you got to stop thinking. The moment you fall into meditation, you're at a point where you're not thinking. So when you're not thinking, you're feeling. You're in a very feeling state, right? And that's why you'll hear people say, it didn't feel right. But that was a crossroad. That was a decision. It didn't feel right, but you did it anyway. And then something adverse happened as a result because you didn't listen to yourself. So the better that you are at listening to yourself, and is it yourself or is it something that's nudging you? Right? So there goes the simulation. So basically your question started out with, how do you make decisions or how do you do things and how do you push forward if the simulation doesn't throw you a sign? It's always throwing you signs. The sign comes in the form of your gut and you have to listen to it. And you have to see how you feel, like turn off all the noise and think about or feel, what is it that I'm feeling? What is it am I sensing in my gut about this? If it don't feel right, and that's something that if it doesn't feel right, I'm not doing it. It takes a very long time. So the things that we've been learning growing up in this society have not been to train us to listen to ourselves. We've been trained to listen to superiors or our perception of a superior. But your only superior is technically yourself or your higher self. That's a different conversation. But what compass are you following? Are you following a compass that somebody gave you? Or are you following a compass that's innate and internal to you that's supposed to be guiding you through your journey? So it's almost like we have to unlearn and relearn how to get back in touch with ourselves. And that feeds back into the self-love. Because if I'm doing it for you, how's that loving on me? Right? If you have to be in control of the journey and the decisions and the compass that you're using for your life, because everybody incarnates into this simulation, and what you incarnate to do is not what I incarnate to do. But so how am I letting you drive my compass? How am I letting you drive? You can't drive my bus for me, right? So we have to get to the point where when we're consistently at a crossroads, that we're intentionally listening to ourselves and we're not listening to a voice of, this is what you should do because this is what society is changing completely now. Society is not what it was 2,000 years ago. And now it's at a point where it's drastically going to shift and it's going to look totally different than what it looks like 2 years from now, right? Or 2,000 years from now. But every time you within yourself get to a crossroad, you have a decision to make. And those decisions that you make is going to guide based on you properly making that decision and properly making the right choices for you to fall into the path to a degree which you already set for yourself. Right? So it's like having your brain wiped, having your memory wiped, coming in scot clean, and you're being forced into a position where you have to listen to yourself, but it's having the awareness that I should be listening to my gut. That's something that most people don't learn until later on in life. Some people are fortunate and they learn it very early on in life and they follow their gut, you know? So, yeah.
I think it's like, I want to thank you so much for sharing with us. You know, I think two things came to mind, which is one, I realized following your gut and listening to your senses does not equal to reacting instantly out of energy's emotion.
Correct.
Because I think sometimes people confuse the two. They're like, I'm being real, I'm being authentic, I'm being me. But then it's like, no, that's not what we mean by following your senses, you know?
Wild and belligerent.
Yeah, that's not what we mean, you know? Because I think, because, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned grace and poise. And it's like when I hang out with my musician friends, it's all about composure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how are you orchestrating your behavior? Mm-hmm. So I love what you shared with me about like following your senses. But then it's like, one thing I realize is we don't mean just react instantly out of emotion, you know?
And I'm not perfect. And that's something that, you know, I actively work on. And I have people in my life who are amazing with reminding me like, oh, that wasn't the way to react to that. I'm like, you're right. So it's very, and the training of catching yourself when you're realizing that you're stepping outside of character. And for some people, being wild and belligerent is their character, you know, but again, balance. Like, how do you remain balanced? How do we not like overreact when we're offended by something or when we are triggered? You know, triggers are hard. Triggers are very difficult for humans.
I was also going to say, Nita, it's going deep because let's speak about mannerisms. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of problematic definitions of what's a right mannerism. So I love that you shared with me, it may be just be their flow. Like they might be just a passionate individual with a loud voice, but is that not etiquette? Or are you just being, you know, ... You know what I mean?
The question now becomes, does it disrupt the vibration? Does it disrupt the flow? Right? Because if we're all zen and we're all relaxing, imagine somebody comes to you like, oh, like, oh, whoa. I'm just passionate. You know, I'm passionate about like, whoa. Be passionate, but be passionate with poise. Because we were all like, we're all zen, and you know, it's like, you know, so things can be noise. You can be passionate without being noisy. And I think that mastering that is would be the best mannerism, in my opinion. But then again, because we live in a society, you know, I get your point about like what's right and what's wrong. I think anything that disrupts the vibration because we move off of wavelengths, and some disruption is good, some disruption is necessary, but this is where timing comes in. So when you're with so many musical references, so is there such thing as a good and a bad crescendo? Yes. Some crescendos are right, but the crescendo should be in sync with the rhythm and the wavelength for what it calls for, right? So timing is everything. You want to be in syncopation with, I have a musical background, and you want to be in syncopation with the wavelength of the things around you. And when we see disruptions in history, there are disruptions that come in with a bang, but it's a beautiful symbol bang, like, wow, something beautiful came out of that, as opposed to it just being like ruckus and someone like, I pay attention. And it's like, whoa, wait, for what though? And that's history. That's literally history in a nutshell. It's the right things at the right time, at the time that it was supposed to come in. And those are just beings following their gut. beings following their gut is on the good things, right, that are in syncopation and in sync with the time and in sync with the wavelength of what the thing calls for, is how you have independence, right? I had to shout out Haiti. So flag, and it goes hand in hand. That's why, rhythm, math, all these things in its perfection, like those are the things that fuel the universe. So like music and math go hand in hand because it's a rhythmic thing. It's sound, right? And sound heals. It's so interesting that you're talking about like mannerism, because everybody, and the name of the show is Just Flow, because things need to just flow at the right time with the right energies and the right sounds and the right rhythm and the right wavelength in order for it to go hand in hand. Mm-hmm.
Nita, I feel like it's like every time I speak with you, I'm like, pow, pow, pow. With all the knowledge share. So I see we have like 9 minutes left. Such a spiritual number. Question for you, Nita. I think that one thing I want to ask you is, how do you stay curious? It's like every time I speak with you,
how do I stay curious?
Content, fintech, product, data, analytics, marketing, photography. Like every time I speak with you, you always am learning and doing. And I'm gonna give you
how do I stay curious? It's so funny that you're asking me that, because I don't think that's something that I even think about it, because it's just a part of my nature. It's a part of my character. So funny story is, I was so curious that even from a child, I just incarnated into an avatar that thirsts for curiosity. Okay. I was walking at 7 months and talking at 9 months. I started very early, very, very early, to the point where like full sentences by the time I was 1, asking people questions, always have my hands in something, always, looking to touch things around the house. So I was a curious child. I was like, I'm walking. I want to know what this is. What's that? So the funny story is that I was so curious that I went into, this was back in the 80s. Okay. I was curious with an electrical socket. I wanted to know what it was. So I took a hairpin and I stuck it in the electrical socket. And my mother was a very active, on top of me, like, don't do that, don't do this, don't touch this, don't touch that. And, and I would be like, my mommy said, don't touch that, but I would touch things anyway, because I'm curious. And zing, I got zapped. I got electrocuted. Never did that again. But it never stopped me from being curious. Like, just because I got electrocuted doesn't mean I'm not going to go searching for this other thing. So I love to learn. I like to know how things work. I like to take things apart and put it back together. I like to work, I read a book from the back. I go to the back of the book first. And curiosity has been something that's just ingrained. It's just innate. That's just a part of my nature.
And I feel like this goes back to, listen to yourself. You have all the answer. Like, you know what rings in my ear these days that you taught me is like, sometimes you forget that you've been knowing this. Like, Nita, your motto to me is always like, Sunju, you just forgot. You've been like this.
Remember. Then the memory loss is major.
And it goes back full circle, because you're like, pace yourself.
It's just no.
Stop doing what everyone is telling you to do. Stopping on autopilot. Go to the beach. Stare at the ocean.
Stare at the sun.
And it's like, and then it's like your own unique soul is going to be like, ooh.
Yeah, your own antenna. It's your own antenna. You just, check in with yourself. That's what the self-love is. Checking in with yourself and tapping into your own antenna and listening to yourself and sitting with yourself, being still, being in the sun, being by the water, being by nature, those are the things that are going to re-jog your memory and remind you, what your roadmap is. That's your compass.
So, follow-up question for you is, because you also know about quantum theory, is
Yeah.
is if you could meet your alternative avatar in a different situation, what question would you ask them? And they live in a simulation where there's no time. So what question would you ask them?
Am I happy? Not to imply that I'm not happy here, because I know here I have a job to do, right? So I would want to know, am I fulfilled? That would be my question.
That gave me chills, Nita. When you said, I would ask, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Because I like to think that we all wish to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
We all wish to be balanced. We all wish to feel fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And you really mic dropped for me when you're like, when I meet my avatar in a different simulation where there's no time, I would just ask my avatar, are you feeling purposeful?
Yeah. Am I happy and am I fulfilled? Because I know here I'm purposeful. Here I'm selfless. Here I have to be selfless. So happiness is coming in a different form here. Fulfillment is in a different form. But, and you're obviously going to be talking telepathically and you can pick up on emotion and energy. So my other avatar will know what I mean by, am I happy? Am I fulfilled? Because I can't imagine in any of my simulations that I'm unhappy. I would want to know what type of happy that is. Yeah. Because I'm happy in this simulation. I just know that I got a job to do. Right? I have a certain journey that I want, but depending on how the crossroads are set up, it's like, and that's the other thing. When there's a certain crossroad that you set up and a certain path that you set up and you try to veer away from that path, why are you veering away from that path? Because in a whole other alternative simulation, you're already in that path. So you're duplicating paths? What are we doing?
This is so powerful.
Just gotta remember what you were your avatar specifically set to do in this simulation, and not try to. We know there's glitches. Our perception of a glitch, like, this is not what I want. Is it not what you wanted? Because that's what you said you wanted. Okay, so let's sit with ourselves and really think about, is this what you want? Mm-hmm.
So one last question for you, Nita. Nita. Thank you for sharing with us this wonderful time, because it's like 1 minute from you is like pearl. And so I appreciate you for this wonderful 1 hour session with you, Nita. I guess to close, we'd like to ask you, where can we find you? And I know you have a lot you're building and working on. So if you could just share some or all or any of the world, in the spirit of pacing yourselves, finding composure, living purposefully, that would be amazing.
So I can be located on Instagram, which will have my link tree, which will take you to all of the amazing things that I'm doing. My handle is called beathelyte, as spelled B-A as in beauty, the light is spelled like MC Light, L-Y-T-E. And that basically means, be the light you wish to see, because we are all beings of light. So work that I'm doing right now, projects are completely geared and focused towards everything Haiti related. The easiest way for me to explain what I do is I'm going to use the example my son used. He's 9, and he said, "You're going to bring technology to Haiti? You're going to make it more tech forward?" I was like, yes, that's exactly what I do. So I build smart cities, but I build smart cities using community and technology. So we know that the only way that we can further an entire city or country does require a lot of planning. It requires process. It requires policy. You need people. You need partners. Haiti to start, because that's where the original revolution started, and we're going through a rebirth of a second revolution per se in multiple contexts. If you want to look at the 13 tribes, or you want to look at it from the context of 1804 repeating itself right now, there's a rebalance that's happening in regards to the universe. So we know that we're in a spiritual war, a cosmic war, and physical war. So there's a job to be done, and technology sits at the center of the future of society. So I focus on bringing community and people together in order to make that happen by using technology in a smart and intuitive way. So be the light, and Solcite, which is SOLCITE.com.
And this is so perfect because tomorrow is
Haitian Flag Day, and the official launch of our power brand called Rara, which is pretty much comes from the word racine, which means roots in Creole. So I did a double play on the word racine and just abbreviated to Rara, which also stands for a certain style of music, which focuses on Haitian folklore and mysticism, to go hand in hand with the civic innovation work that we do at Solcite. So our apparel brand focuses on establishing identity and getting Haitians reacclimated, Tainos reacclimated, because we do have indigenous sovereign beings who just need to be reminded and awakened to understand their calling and to understand who they are. So Rara Society, which is SOCITE.com, IETE.com, and Solcite.com to go hand in hand with my IG handle, Be the Light.
Thank you so much, Nita. I love that you closed our session with a banger, and we can't wait to see how you abundantly unfold all these initiatives. And it was so awesome and amazing, and we're always so grateful to be in your presence.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me. So very much so grateful and humble. I'm definitely elated, and I'm happy that the coordinates and the compass brought us together to meet at our crossroads.
Yeah. We heart you, Nita. We heart you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.